month ahead report for the Gemini New Moon cycle, which begins on May 30th and runs all the way to June 28th, with the Sagittarius full moon happening on June 14th. So let's go ahead and get into it. Last month we had the eclipse, the Taurus new moon solar eclipse. And as I stated last month and went over in my last video, eclipses span a 6-month period. So when they come in, they initiate a new 6-month chapter in our lives. In this case, the Taurus solar eclipse, new moon solar eclipse, happened on April 30th. And 2 weeks later, we had the Scorpio full moon lunar eclipse. And combined, they initiated us into this 6-month chapter of our lives. And of course, with their transits, they gave us a theme that I'll be discussing in the coming slides. But most importantly to note is that it is a 6-month chapter. And I've mentioned before the importance of the midpoint of the eclipse, which very much acts as a full moon in the way of energy, in the way of manifestation, in the way of seeing the tangible manifestations of what the eclipses brought in. And that will be happening between the end of the Cancer moon cycle and that of the Leo new moon cycle. So between the end of July and the beginning of August is when we reach the midpoint. And from then on, we will see the tangible manifestations of what these eclipses called for. So we are now in month number 2. We just finished month number 1, getting ready for the Gemini new moon. And this is what I'm going to be talking about. Again, running from May 30th through to June 28th. But that being said, I think it is critical to review what took place at the Taurus new moon solar eclipse and Scorpio full moon lunar eclipse and the themes that came out of that, because this is what we're going to be seeing chiseled out over the next 6 months with each of the moon cycles. So looking at the Sabian symbols of the Taurus new moon solar eclipse, it was development of the powers of the mind on which ego consciousness is based. This has a lot to do with that Mercury retrograde that overlapped the eclipses, really calling us into greater states of presence, of awareness, to combat the tendency for distractions, to be easily distracted, and stay focused on what's taking place. And the lunar eclipse Sabian symbol was the ability to adjust swiftly to a new situation by tuning into its requirements. So again, there is this theme just overarching with these eclipse cycles over these next 6 months about a need to stay very present. And this is going to be particularly important as we get into the Gemini new moon. And again, it will be with us, though, all throughout this eclipse cycle. The next eclipse cycle is happening in October. And so from now through October, this is the theme that we're with. This need to develop the powers of the mind in order to adjust to new situations quickly. All right. So one other thing that I wanted to talk about were the themes that I brought or I mentioned last month in regards to what the transits that were happening at the Taurus new moon and the Scorpio full moon, because combined they give us a better understanding of what's coming. So as I mentioned before, I definitely see that there's going to be a deepening of bifurcations. There's going to be more of a split and divide among people in regards to these new landscapes coming in, a lot of sudden disruptions in the tangible world, a lot of things going on with authority figures, a lot of things going on with authority within ourselves. And I just want to stop there and just talk about that for a moment. And that really came through with the Saturn square, the nodes, at the time of both eclipses. And as I mentioned before, the nodes are critical points It marks what we're being guided towards, and with a North Node in Taurus, we're being guided to really understand what it is that is meaningful to us. What are our values? Really evaluate what is important to us. And this goes into principles, a sense of self-worth, integrity, living with integrity, living with self-reliance. And again, with the Saturn square, the North Node in Taurus, stepping up with a sense of responsibility towards self-reliance. But just as equally as Saturn is squaring the North Node, it is also squaring the South Node. And that means that this is a choice point. We all have the free will to make choices. And it also depends on our level of consciousness and how much we fall into fear. And that South Node in Scorpio would certainly be tempting us in that manner. And with a lot of the pressure that's mounting, maybe we're getting into fear-driven states where there is more codependencies, or codependent behaviors are getting magnified, manipulation, coercion, etc. All that I talked about in the South, in the nodal axis, the North Node in Taurus, South Node in Scorpio nodal axis video. So I definitely recommend checking that out again if you just need a quick rehash. So what can we see at the global? We can see a lot of, or in the collective, a lot of abuses of authority. We can also see people stepping up with an inner sense of authority, inner sense of sovereignty, and self-reliance in the face of this. A need to definitely reprioritize our lives because of the tangible disruptions the sudden disruptions in the tangible world. And definitely when it comes to bifurcations, a need to not allow ourselves to get distracted and stay intuitively attuned to all that's taking place, because things would be moving quite rapidly. Now with the Mercury retrograde, it's called for new thinking. We need to look at our thinking skills, our perception skills at an even more critical level. This has been a theme that's been going on for quite some time now. I need to think differently. And also I want to say it's one where we're being asked to really honor our sense of intuition as a valuable resource as we move through these times, as we move through this eclipse cycle. So again, we are stepping into the second month of this eclipse season that runs from May all the way to October. And each month we'll be chiseling out deeper layers of these themes that you see here to the right. So now we are in the Gemini New Moon cycle, and that one begins on May 30th with the new moon and runs all the way to June 28th. Noting that the full moon happens midway through this moon cycle on June 14th. And that's what I'm going to be talking about. What are the themes for this moon cycle? What are the upgrades that we can expect or anticipate to come into? Or what are we working towards by the end of this moon cycle, this end of this mini chapter of a bigger 6-month chapter that's unfolding? What can we expect for ourselves around the time of June 27th and 28th. So, as always, I like to start with the Sabian symbol of a new moon. And for this Gemini new moon, at 9 degrees of Gemini, the Sabian symbol is the superior ability to challenge nature and play with danger. Through the controlled use of mental powers, once again, we have this theme about the powers of the mind that this eclipse, the last eclipse on April 30th, called for. Man is able to challenge the most basic force in nature, gravitation. He enjoys playing with it as a lion tamer with his violent animals. But what he challenges is within himself as well as outside. Gravitation is the universal binding force of the material world. By challenging it, man prepares himself to pierce beyond the physical and to reach higher realms of existence. He may lose the struggle, but that prospect makes the effort more exciting. He might gain immortality. This is the final stage of the 14th sequence. The symbol for it has a strong sense of finality. No possibility of half measures exist. Man is committed irrevocably to success or failure, at least as a conscious and self-reliant mind. There's that self-reliance theme once again. The alternatives are clear-cut. One may describe it as mind versus matter, or as man's will against the fate that gravitation so aptly symbolizes. So already, as we're looking at this Gemini new moon, there's this sense of an acute, stark attention or a need to come into a strong sense of presence with everything that's playing out, to really step into that spiritual warrior mode that I've been talking about, and look at everything that's taking place and use our intuition to guide us through things. Use that power of manifestation, of synchronicity, of signs to connect the dots that we need to connect to in order to navigate. Now, this Gemini new moon comes after the Taurus new moon, which we had last month. Gemini is always all to do with our thinking realm. It's all to do with thinking, communication, expression, facts and information, details, and that's where this new moon is taking place. As I said, the full moon that's happening in 2 weeks, that brings in the breakthroughs, is happening in the sign of Sagittarius, of belief, of exploring new possibilities, of intuition, of seeing the bigger picture of things, a new paradigm, if you will. And then afterwards, in 2 weeks after that, we'll have the Cancer full moon, and that will deal more with the feeling base. But as it stands, we have this Gemini new moon where the sun is in the sign of Gemini, and then we'll move into the sign of Cancer in the last week. And I just want to quickly go again into what Gemini season is about, because it gives us just a foundation before I get into the transits themselves. So Gemini is all about expression. It is about our perception. It is about how we gather information, how we communicate with others, how we connect and socialize. It's about looking at the details of information, our immediate surroundings, our local community, and the connections that we build, and the sources of information where we gather our information. And some of the unconscious expressions that we'll be dealing with, or the unconscious expressions of Gemini, has a lot to do with allowing ourselves to be distracted. That's why distraction was a big part of this last Mercury retrograde, because it did happen in Gemini, and Mercury does rule the sign of Gemini. So a lot of distracted thinking, indecisiveness, flightiness, cognitive dissonance. Are we seeing quite a lot of that in this world at this time? A lot of shallow thinking, not using our critical reasoning skills to maneuver through information and connect dots. So these are some of the themes that are going to be playing out. Now we have this sun moving into the sign of Cancer in the last quarter moon week, the third week of this moon cycle. And like I said, that will be more about the emotional realm and dealing with the emotional realm. And certainly we have, just because the sun is moving from Gemini into Cancer, this progression where we're taking information and then later on we will have to sort it out emotionally. This month, it's all about our mind states, how we gather information. So let's take a look at the Gemini new moon that's taking place once again on May 30th. And we know it's a new moon because the sun and the moon are together in the sky, and they will be together at 9 degrees of Gemini. I've already talked to you about the Sabian symbol for that, the message for that. And it is a Gemini new moon that is making a stark semi-square to Eris. Now, Eris is the divine feminine warrior, the Mars counterpart, and just like Mars, it has an unconscious and conscious expression. And with Eris, this all has to do with going after what we want, but in a more feminine way. Now we can do so in an undercut, this is a doggy dog world. They're doing it, so I'm doing it type of energy. In the higher consciousness, this is the divine feminine. This is I'm doing what's right. I'm standing up for what's right with strong convictions and values and value sets. So with this new moon in Gemini, which has to do with our perception, our mind states, etc., in a semi-square to Eris, which is an acute aspect. It's not a comfortable one. It's one where maybe we are coming to a stark realization to step up with more mindful states, not allowing ourselves to be distracted. Again, this whole idea of mind over matter playing a critical role as we step up with greater states of integrity and determination. And again, with everything that we learned last month, a greater state of intuition and states of presence in order to be able to navigate information that's coming in. This will be a month about information flooding in, and what do we do with it, and how can we stand in greater states of integrity and determination as we navigate through a lot of that. The next thing I want to talk about is Mercury, because, well, that's not only the next planet away from the sun, but it is the ruler of Gemini. And it is, as we know, playing a big role in this, as we are now in the last days of the Mercury retrograde that began at the time of the last solar eclipse. This is critical. It's critical that we have this new moon happening at a time that Mercury is still in retrograde. Although it's about to go forward in the next coming days on June 3rd, it's still retrograde at the time of this new moon, which is significant for this entire moon cycle, because whatever takes place at a new moon gives us an overarching understanding of the entire moon cycle. And so with Mercury retrograde, in its last degrees of retrograde, no less at the same degree that lunar eclipse, the sun was at the time of the lunar eclipse, we are still very much taking in information, developments, things that have been unfolding or being exposed, as the Scorpio full moon tends to do, since the full moon that happened 2 weeks ago, still wrapping our minds around a lot of that. Now, Mercury is, because it is at the 26th degree, it is making a trine to Pluto. This is maybe our minds are very much fixated in trying to wrap their minds around things. It's making a sextile to Neptune. It's knowing, it's having to use its intuition in order to navigate, to connect dots. Things are not so crystal clear. We are laser focused in trying to intuitively connect dots that aren't necessarily laid out for us. And most importantly, it is making a square to Saturn. And this is a sense of discipline, a sense of determination, a sense of responsibility. Things are serious. There's a serious tone connected with this Gemini new moon. There's a serious tone as we're building up to this Gemini new moon. And it's still in a close conjunction to the North Node, or is retrograded back enough within 4 degrees of the North Node. Again, that North Node is really calling us to step up with a sense of solid values, principles, what is truly meaningful, and self-reliance as well. So with this Mercury retrograde, at the time of this Gemini new moon, what it's saying for the month ahead is like our minds are really starting to come online, because we're 3 days away from the Mercury going direct, but with more presence, laser-like determination, intuitive awareness. There's something that we are being called to really take some time to observe, to pay attention to honor the time it takes to really wrap our minds around everything that's taking place and really build a sense of intuition from that. And again, our minds are very much focused at the time of this Gemini new moon, saying this is probably going to be a month where we are very focused, and there's this strong sense of discipline that's being asked of us. Now, Venus, at this time of this Gemini new moon, has just entered the sign of Taurus, her home sign. She likes being here. It's all about the sensualities. It's all about finding the comfort and security in our lives. It's all about taking stock of what's most important in our lives. Now, she's making a friendly sextile to Black Moon Lilith and Ceres in the sign of Cancer. And both of these really have to do with how we self-nurture ourselves. How do we do so and maintain greater states of emotional intelligence amidst possibly what would be fluctuating, emotionally fluctuating scenarios, situations that could throw us emotionally off balance. And so really needing to find a sense of security based on what helps us stay emotionally balanced. And this is going to be very important because that Black Moon Lilith in Ceres is making a critical square to Mars, which is conjunct Jupiter. Mars is the planet to do with our motivation, our ambition, what drives us, and it is conjunct Jupiter, the planet that magnifies things, in a square to Black Moon Lilith and Ceres. This could be a lot of triggers that are taking place, things that really emotionally trigger us, and maybe needing to take extra care that we are not navigating with emotional states or misalignments. We need to have that emotional intelligence to be able to navigate wisely as we pioneer a new way forward. Both Mars and Jupiter in the sign of Aries is all about pioneering new ways forward. It's kind of like taking the unbeaten path, being more independent. But the downside of it is that it can be very aggressive, especially if we are not taking care of ourselves emotionally, especially if we are triggered by the changes that we need to take, that we need to make in regards to the tangible world, Venus, which has to do with resources, money dynamics, etc. So when it comes to both Mars and Venus, this is with Venus, it's what are our value sets, our relationships, our money dynamics. This is a sense of grounding when it comes to them. But it's so important to really tune into that emotional intelligence, to tune into our emotions this month, really making sure that we take extra steps to self-nurture ourselves and really look at what is important to us. What do we need in order to move forward? What will bring us comfort and security in our lives? And really taking note of that. Now, with Mars, again, in a conjunction with Jupiter, square Black Moon Lilith and Ceres, this is a stark need to remain balanced as we pioneer a way forward. And it's going to require what I would envision constant emotional intelligence and rebalancing. And you know, as new information comes in, we might be thrown off emotionally. This could be a lot of triggers this month, a lot of aggression. We have to take care of other people as well, and navigating situations, because I would assume that many people would be very much triggered at this time. So that also playing into this need to be at a stark, attentive state, being very mindful of everything that's taking place, because certainly people will play into that. And I think as Venus gets closer and closer to Uranus, which is happening on June 11th for those in the United States, in the week of the first quarter moon, which is the week of challenges, this is something that could bring about unexpected developments, especially in the tangible world, and a need to navigate that. Now, the last thing I do want to talk about is Saturn, again, is in a square to the nodal axis. This is that aspect that has been with us. It was with us at the time of the solar eclipse. It's still, it's waning, but it's still very much with us. And again, this is a need for inner sovereignty towards more self-reliance. And, you know, rather than allowing ourselves to structure our lives in codependent ways or be dependent on others that could take advantage of us, and ensuring that we are in structuring ourselves. That's not to say that we can't depend on others. We certainly can, but we want to make sure that they're doing so in a manner that they're honoring our boundaries, honoring our sense of authority within ourselves, and again, really upholding these understandings of integrity in commitments and relationships. And of course, this would play into government structures as well, and governments having this choice point between the North Node of Taurus, of standing up with integrity, or a lot of coercive behavior, manipulation, and abuses of authority that we could be facing as part of this new information coming in, and a need to stay mindful of everything that's taking place. Now, 2 weeks after the Gemini new moon, we will have the Sagittarius full moon. And it is the Sagittarius full moon that brings through the breakthroughs of the new moon, the Gemini new moon, that's calling us into greater states of attentiveness, really upgrading our ability to intuitively perceive the tangible world and navigate through all this information. And the Sagittarius full moon is happening at 23 degrees of Sagittarius. And what's most notable for me for this full moon is that it is squaring Neptune. Now, Sagittarius, again, has all to do with seeing the bigger picture, exploring new possibilities, new perspectives. A full moon in Sagittarius can mean that we're changing our belief, we're expanding our minds. It can also have a lot to do with intuition, maybe seeing the bigger picture through intuitive faculties. And certainly that would play a big role, I think, once again, because it is square Neptune, the planet that has all to do with intuition, spirituality, navigating through kind of a broader perspective, and such. Now, on the downside, this can bring a lot of confusion. It's not one where we are able to really apply a lot of logical thinking, which is what the sun is trying to do. It's saying that sun in Gemini is saying we need to take in the facts. We need to sort fact from fiction. We need to really get clear on what's happening here. But this full moon square Neptune suggests that there's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of needing to sort through facts, and maybe needing to do so from a higher perspective, from a broader understanding, and also needing to connect dots, using that, our intuitive mind, to be able to connect dots. It is also this full moon sextiling Saturn, saying we need to be reinventive, we need to reinvent ourselves structurally, maybe come up with new ways of structuring our mind. Trining Eris, that strong conviction, and quincunxing the North Node. That's an uncomfortable aspect to the North Node, so I do expect that this full moon, and on top of it being square Neptune, which certainly is uncomfortable in itself, but with a quincunx to the North Node, it's saying that we need to make some adjustments. We need to make some adjustments towards more self-reliance and to uphold our principles and values at the time of this full moon. And again, very much related to this mind over matter. It's staying focused with the facts at hand, the information coming in, connecting dots, and then applying this bigger understanding to whatever's taking place at the Sagittarius full moon in order for us to bring in greater states of our mental faculties. Jupiter, the ruler of Sagittarius at the time of this full moon, will be again, will continue to be in Aries, but it's going to be in a semi-square to the North Node and a semi-square to Venus, which is very much close to the North Node at the time of this full moon. And so Jupiter, all about how we explore in Aries, needing to have this sense of independence, this confidence, and be assertive with our direction forward as we make these kind of uncomfortable shifts towards more self-reliance. These are not comfortable at all with a semi-square to both Venus and the North Node. We're going to have to make some shifts into more assertiveness and hopefully not that aggressive behavior that Aries can bring in, and that would be tied to the South Node of manipulation of, I'm just going to get what I want. No, this is really calling us to step up with greater states of integrity and self-worth and self-reliance to pioneer a new way forward and level up to a new sense of confidence. So the shift that's coming through that's going to help us bring in the new moon upgrades is a shift, shifts that have us changing our belief systems, maybe opening up to a broader perspective amidst some sudden new developments with people and money that can cause a lot of confusion. And we need to keep an open mind towards new ways of reinventing ourselves in more self-reliant ways while staying very much focused at the facts at hand. And a need definitely with that Jupiter to stay grounded in assertive behavior rather than reactive, aggressive behavior. And the next thing I want to talk about, of course, is Mercury at the time of this Sagittarius full moon that's happening on June 14th. And it's quite notable that Mercury will be back at the 0 degree mark that it was at the time of the Taurus new moon solar eclipse on April 30th. That's super critical. It was the Kazemi point. This was a big degree for the Mercury retrograde. And not only that, it is Mercury will have just entered the sign of Gemini. That's big in itself, and suggesting that all of a sudden kind of our minds really do come online. We're expressive, we're connecting, we're engaging with others. But it is in a semi-square once again to Chiron, and this time Mars, which can certainly be superbly triggering. Mars conjunct Chiron in itself, a lot of aggressive behavior, especially if we're triggered by situations that are coming in, especially triggered by information that's coming in with a semi-square to Mercury. And so this is, once again, we're being called. Remember that the Mercury post-shadow is just as important as the retrograde and the pre-shadow. It's the have you learned your lesson of the Mercury retrograde? It's the final test that the universe sends us in regards to our upgrades that we did through the Mercury retrograde. And that had all to do with staying focused, not allowing ourselves to be distracted, being able to use our intuition to navigate through information that's coming in, kind of source, what is fact, what is fiction, what fits, what does not fit, what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, really using our critical reasoning skills. And so with this Mercury in that semi-square to Mars, which is in a conjunction to Chiron, this is significant. Again, Mercury, the ruler of Gemini. And the last thing before I bring out or talk about the summary of these three transits is Uranus. Uranus in Taurus, it has been in Taurus. It's making a semi-square to Black Moon Lilith and Juno at the time of this full moon. And so this could be where there's a lot of emotional fluctuation and need to really tune into higher states of that emotional intelligence to elevate what it means to be emotionally intelligent. And in a semi-square to Juno, it's one where we're shifting our ideals, our sense of what is ideals, especially in partnerships. So a lot of lessons of the past coming through, again, all attached to that Mercury back in Gemini at the Kazemi point, at the point that it was at the time of the pre-shadow, at the time it was on April 30th at the Taurus new moon solar eclipse. A lot of lessons in regards to how we can stay focused amidst triggery situations and information. How do we engage with others or share or express information? And how do we stay balanced within so that we're not sharing information from these emotionally triggered states? And also, are we getting information from sources that are demonstrating that? That's also part of our lessons. Intuition plays a major role in being able to navigate from a space of inspired action, that's that Mars, rather than reactionary emotional states. That Mars conjunct Chiron, hopefully we're using it to reinvent ourselves, to learn from lessons of the past, to not allow ourselves to get distracted or reactionary in the way that we use our mental faculties to navigate the confusion that I would say it would be coming through at the time of this Sagittarius full moon. And again, the idea of what is ideal in partnerships would be shifting as well at the time of this full moon. Again, all part and parcel of helping us step into greater states of using our mind, seeing our mind as a valuable resource as we navigate these challenging times. I've said it on my membership group, and I'll say it again here, that intuition for me is probably the top of my list when it comes to the resource, as my favorite resource beyond money, beyond relationships, beyond any things that I have in the tangible world, because it is with our intuition that we can navigate at the right time, at the right to the right situations, ideas, or sources of inspiration, and that's invaluable with the times that we have ahead of us. Again, we are spiritual beings. That's what the evolutionary intent of all of these changes that are taking place in our world around us. Humanity is being called to step up to a greater level of consciousness, and that's what we need to stay focused on, and understand that this is a spiritual journey that we're all on. Now, understandably, this could be a lot to take in, especially in regards to information over the next month ahead. But I like to divide each moon cycle up by the 4 different phases of the moon and do the transits by the 4 different phases of the moon. If you followed me on Instagram for the last 2 years, this is how I've done it. Oh gosh, is it actually 3 years now? Anyway, I like to divide up the transits of each moon cycle by the moon phases, and that's the new moon, the first quarter moon, the full moon, and the last quarter moon. Each of those in itself, every month, has a different spiritual meaning, a different part of our journey as we transit through the moon cycle. And it is in this first week that we are seeding, new situations are seeding, and so it is one where we want to pay close attention to whatever is taking place, being mindful that they are going to serve, new situations that are coming up are going to help or be the catalysts for the growth, which is all related to how well we can stay focused on the matter and facts at hand in order to make reinventive and intuitively inspired moves forward. And that's what we are working towards, to improve our ability of doing this. Again, as part of this eclipse cycle that came in last month with the Taurus new moon solar eclipse, all to do with upgrading the powers of the mind to adjust to situations swiftly. So in light of the fact that I do the transits by each week, just a quick rundown of the weekly highlights. Again, the sun starts off in the sign of Gemini in week number 1. We have the Gemini new moon on May 30th. That's the mind over matter Gemini new moon, and the Gemini new moon week goes through to June 6th, and it is during this week that we have quite a bit of transits. I've just listed a couple here. If you want a full list of that, do check out how to get that on one of my memberships by staying tuned to the very end, and I'll go over that with you there. But on June 3rd, we have Mercury going direct, the Sun sesquiquadrant Pluto, Mars semi-squared the North Node. That's a lot of intensity at the time that Mercury goes direct, at the time that our minds are coming online, are becoming more aware of everything that's taking place. And 2 days after that, Saturn goes retrograde. We really start to rethink how we are structuring our lives. And of course, Saturn goes retrograde for about 4 months, so we'll come back direct. I believe it is in October. And so we start to a process of really reevaluating how we're structuring our lives. Then on June 6th, Venus comes into a semi-square with Neptune right in time for this first quarter moon, which always brings some challenges. Venus semi-square Neptune brings a lot of confusion when it comes to people, money, and resources, values that we have, really throws things in the air. We start to feel the confusion that I talked about that's building up to the Sagittarius full moon. And of course, starting to feel the intense pressure that always tends to come with the first quarter moon, the week that always has us facing challenges, and that's coming in from June 7th through June 13th. There aren't that many transits during this first quarter moon week, although there are tons of transits with Black Moon Lilith that I've not listed here. But Mars comes into a semi-square with Saturn the day after Venus comes into a semi-square with Neptune. This could be that we're really realizing the intensity, a sense of discipline that needs to be had, a sense of responsibility. Maybe we're facing some challenges, some roadblocks. Maybe authority figures are giving roadblocks. Whatever it is, this is part of the challenges that we must face during the first quarter moon. We also have Mercury trine Pluto. This is very helpful. This is a laser-like focus of being able to deal with the situation at hand. On June 13th, we have Mercury back in the sign of Gemini, back at that Cazimi point. That is the day I talked about a couple slides back. This is the day also right after Venus has come into a conjunction with Uranus, bringing sudden new developments. And so it will be Mercury in the sign of Gemini and the day after this on June 14th for the Sagittarius full moon. So this is Mercury back in the sign of Gemini, getting ready for that full moon on June 14th. On June 14th, we have the Sagittarius full moon. This is where paradigms start shifting. And in this week, there are tons of transits. At the time of the Sagittarius full moon, and in the week of that Sagittarius full moon, the week of breakthroughs, the week where we start to see the tangible manifestations of our minds being able to maintain that mind over matter state and really stay focused. And that's where we're really going to be challenged to do so. Mercury has that semi-square to Mars in Chiron. It's very triggery. Mars then conjuncts Chiron. Again, a need to reinvent ourselves. On June 16th, the Sun squares Neptune. This is one where we could feel tired. We can feel worn down. Luckily, also on that day, Sun sextile Saturn, so hopefully we're circumnavigating that. A big part of the Sun square Neptune is kind of needing to not rely on the logical, the rational side of ourselves, our Gemini selves, and really attune to this kind of spiritual journey that we are on, being able to navigate with signs and synchronicities. We end that week with Venus conjuncting the North Node and then squaring Saturn. This is a beautiful set of transits, really bringing about some destiny to the mix when it comes to relationship and money dynamics, and then really stepping up with a sense of solidity in regards to them. Again, as long as we're stepping up into more self-reliant states, if we're in more codependent states, this could come as some harsh realities that end that week out. On June 4th, that's when the Sun moves into the sign of Cancer, and that is the week number 4. It started off with the last quarter moon. This is the week of release to receive. It's the week from June 21st through 28th. It's the one where we start to receive in the harvests of this kind of upgraded mental state, this renewed sense of information. We've been able to keep our minds over matter. We've been able to get to the information that we need to be able to intuitively maneuver through situations. and reinvent ourselves. Hopefully, that's what these upgrades are all about. The sun moves into the sign of Cancer on June 21st. And then so we officially enter into Cancer season, but for me, it's never until the new moon that comes, and that will be happening on June 29th. Then on June 23rd, we have a series of transits that are taking place. Again, this release to receive week. The sun semi-squares Uranus, Mercury semi-squares Eris, Venus semi-squares Chiron. Mars is in a quincunx to the south node, and Saturn sextiles Eris. This is a lot of change. This is our hearts shifting, stepping into new paradigms with our minds, new states of awareness that are helping us navigate intuitively. June 27th and June 28th, this is when we start to receive in the harvest of this moon. We're really stepping into this greater sense of alignment with our mental faculties, with our intuitive ability to navigate reality and connect dots. With the sun semi-squaring the north node on June 27th, and Neptune going retrograde. Neptune going retrograde really has us internalizing. Again, another planet that goes retrograde for about 4 or 5 months won't come direct until about October time. Really navigating our hearts, really feeling this need to step up with a greater sense of self-reliance and navigating intuitively. On June 28th, Mars conjuncts Eris and sextiles Saturn. This is a lot of fortitude, confidence, stepping up with conviction, stepping up with a sense of determination, and getting ready for the Cancer new moon cycle that will then begin a new cycle on June 29th. One which I think will be preparing us emotionally, given all the information we've come into, really integrating that at an emotional level to proceed forward on our journey. Now, what you see here listed on this slide are just a few of the transits that are taking place over this next moon cycle. For those on my membership group, I do have the monthly breakdown of transits up on the membership dashboard now. I also have the synchronicity log up there so that you can take notes and journal through each of the moon phases this month. Take note of the synchronicities. There's tons of synchronicities when it comes to the moon cycle. It's something definitely I recommend beholding, because it really helps navigating the difficult times and understanding, where you are on the journey of these upgrades. And I also have the Moon Moods log, both in a log form and a visual form, so that you can track where the moon is at and where we are in the moon cycle. And that's all up on the member dashboard, along with the calendar import file of where the moon is, getting notified when the moon transits a particular sign. Again, I do all my transit reports based on the moon phase and the moon sign, so look out for that for those that are on my membership. And with that, I wish you all a beautiful Gemini, minds over matter, Gemini new moon. And hopefully we can keep our minds focused through what could be a very challenging time when it comes to information. Now, if you would like more support and you're not on my membership group right now, just know that I do have 2 types of memberships. I have just the basics, which is $5 a month. That gives you access to my daily updates and reminders of the transits that are happening, kind of some inspirational support as you navigate through them. Especially this comes in very handy with those more challenging times, to know that you're not alone during these transits, and just again to stay focused with everything that's going on. I also have the full access group, which is $25 per month, $20 if you join on a quarterly rate. In addition to access to the Telegram group, this gives you 4 weekly videos each moon phase. So a total of 16 videos for the entire month. And each week you get what I call the weekly transits. I go over the weekly transits in advance, kind of so that you have an idea of what's coming. You can get emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and physically prepared for the week ahead. I also then have what's called an All Things 5D, how to look at things from a more 5D perspective, how to prepare yourself for the week. I get more into detail on that emotional, physical, spiritual, and mental preparation for the week ahead, including tarot as well. In addition to that, I have a mini astrology course, so I go deeper into the astrology for those that are interested in learning more. And last but not least, I go over news events, global news events, and apply them to the astrology for two reasons. One, to show the synchronicity of global events that are taking place and show them as reflections of our own personal journey. And two, it's important, I feel, to keep abreast of things that are taking place as part of our discernment. Now, also, I do offer private consultations for those that are interested. I do natal chart consultations so that you can learn more about yourself, your weaknesses, the challenges that you're here to face as part of your evolutionary story, and your assets as well. And I also offer navigational coaching for those that are needing a little bit more tender love and care in regards to navigating all these transits. So with that, you can find more information about the membership group on or my private consultations at my website, www.astrologybylyra.com. And I'll be up next month to talk about the Cancer new moon. Bye for now.